Elena had always been drawn to things that carried weight. Not emotional weight, she avoided that, but the literal heft of history. Old books with cracked leather spines, brass keys that opened nothing anymore, furniture scarred by generations of careless hands. So when she spotted the mirror at the estate sale on the outskirts of the city, she didn't hesitate. It stood alone in the dusty parlor of a Victorian house scheduled for demolition, propped against wallpaper peeling like sunburned skin. The frame was dark walnut, carved with twisting vines and faces half hidden in the foliage, women with hollow eyes and mouths open in silent screams. The glass itself was tall and narrow, its surface rippled with age, giving every reflection a faint underwater distortion. The price tag read $40. The seller, an exhausted woman in a gray cardigan, barely looked up when Elena paid. "It's been in the family forever," the woman muttered. "Good riddance." Elena carried it home herself, wrapped in an old quilt, and hung it in her bedroom above the dresser. That first night, she stood in front of it longer than necessary, studying how the ripples warped her face, making her eyes seem deeper, her mouth wider. She laughed at herself for feeling unsettled. It was just old glass. The changes began subtly. On the second night, she noticed her reflection blinked a fraction slower than she did. She told herself it was fatigue, she'd been working late restoring paintings at the museum. On the third night, the reflection smiled when she didn't. Just a twitch at the corner of the mouth, gone when she leaned closer. By the end of the first week, Elena stopped turning on the overhead light when she entered the bedroom. She used only the small lamp on her nightstand, because in full light the mirror looked too alive. The carved faces seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. She caught herself avoiding eye contact with her own reflection, the way one avoids a stranger staring too intensely on the subway. One evening, after a 12-hour shift, she came home bone-tired and sat on the edge of the bed in her coat. She meant only to rest for a moment before changing, but exhaustion pinned her in place. The room was dim, the mirror a darker rectangle against the wall. She looked up. Her reflection was already staring back. But it wasn't quite her. The coat was the same charcoal wool, the hair the same messy bun, but the face beneath was gaunt, cheekbones sharp under translucent skin. The eyes were too large, irises faded to the color of weak tea. And the mouth, God, the mouth, was stretched in a smile that showed too many teeth. Elena's breath fogged in the cold room. She hadn't realized how cold it had become. She stood slowly, as if sudden movement might provoke whatever stood opposite her. The reflection did not mirror the motion. It remained seated, smiling. "Who are you?" Elena whispered. The reflection tilted its head. Its lips moved, but no sound came from Elena's own mouth. The voice emerged from the glass itself, thin and papery, like wind through dead leaves. "I've been waiting." Elena stumbled backward, knocking over the lamp. Darkness swallowed the room except for the faint glow of streetlight leaking through the blinds. In that striped half-light, she could still see the mirror. The figure inside had stood. It pressed pale hands against the inside of the glass. The surface bulged slightly, as if the mirror were soft. Elena ran. She slept on the couch that night, every light in the apartment blazing. At 3:17 a.m., she heard footsteps overhead, slow, deliberate pacing across her bedroom ceiling. But she lived on the top floor. There was no one above her. The next day, she called in sick to work. She researched the mirror online, searching for similar carvings, similar reports. Nothing definitive. One forum thread from 2009 mentioned a mirror with screaming ladies in the woodwork, sold at an estate sale in the same county. The poster claimed it had belonged to a woman named Clara Ashwood who vanished in 1923. The thread ended abruptly, the user's account had been deleted. That night, Elena covered the mirror with a sheet. It didn't help. She woke at dawn to find the sheet on the floor, folded neatly. Her reflection was waiting again, but now it wore her favorite red dress, the one she hadn't touched in months. It stood close to the glass, forehead almost touching the surface. When Elena approached, heart hammering, the reflection lifted a hand and traced a word backward on the inside of the mirror. Soon. The glass was ice cold under Elena's fingertips when she reached out to confirm it was real. She tried to get rid of it. She called antique dealers, none would take it without seeing it first, and she couldn't bear to uncover it again. She considered smashing it, but every time she picked up the hammer, her arms went numb, fingers loosening until the tool clattered to the floor. Days blurred. She stopped eating. The mirror began to show her things that hadn't happened yet, herself walking down the hallway at work, but everyone turning away as if she weren't there. Herself sitting at the kitchen table, slicing an apple, the knife slipping, blood blooming across the wood. Each vision ended with her reflection smiling wider. One night, she dreamed she was inside the mirror. The glass was a long corridor stretching endlessly in both directions, lined with identical frames. In each frame stood a version of herself, some older, some younger, some with eyes missing, some with mouths sewn shut. They all watched her pass. At the end of the corridor stood the gaunt figure in the red dress. It opened its arms. When Elena woke, she was standing in front of the mirror. The sheet lay at her feet again. Her reflection wore the same pajamas she did, but its skin had begun to sag, as if something inside was shrinking. Its eyes were black pits. It spoke with her own voice this time, coming from her own throat even as her lips stayed closed. You kept me waiting so long. All those years in attics and basements, covered in dust. I was patient. I knew someone lonely would come. Elena tried to scream, but the sound caught behind her teeth. I don't want your body, the thing said gently. Bodies rot. I want your place on that side. Just a trade. Fair, isn't it? She felt it then, a pulling, like cold fingers hooked under her ribs, tugging her forward. The glass softened, rippling like water. Her hand sank in up to the wrist before she jerked back. The reflection looked disappointed. Tomorrow night, then, it said. When you're tired enough to stop fighting. Elena spent the day preparing. She bought salt, researched banishments, printed prayers in languages she didn't speak. She drew a circle of salt around the mirror and sat outside it with a crucifix she hadn't touched since childhood. At midnight, the lamp flickered and died. In the sudden dark, she heard glass shifting, not breaking, but moving, rearranging. When the emergency light from the smoke detector glowed faintly, she saw the mirror's surface had cleared. No ripples. Perfect reflection. Except the reflection was empty. She was no longer in it. Panic surged. She looked down at her hands, still there, still solid. But when she stood, the salt circle was undisturbed, and on the other side of it, inside the frame, stood the gaunt figure wearing her red dress. It raised a hand in greeting. Elena turned to run, but the bedroom door wouldn't open. The knob turned, but the door stayed sealed, as if the frame had fused to the wall. She pounded until her fists bled. Behind her, the voice, no longer hers, but something older, hollow, spoke from inside the mirror. Thank you, Elena. It's beautiful over here. So much space to move. She whirled. The figure stepped out of the frame, bare feet silent on the wood floor. Its skin hung loose, empty in places, as if waiting to be filled. It smiled with her mouth. Elena backed against the door, heart battering her ribs. The thing reached for her, fingers lengthening, sharpening. The last thing she felt was cold glass sliding over her like a second skin, pressing her flat, folding her smaller and smaller until she fit neatly behind the surface. The ripples returned, gentle, soothing. In the morning, the apartment was quiet. The mirror hung straight and